Good morning, everyone. And in case you're watching this some other time, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is Versus, the hit show that everyone at your school is talking about.
Kids can relate to this show.
If not in school anymore, congratulations, you made it. But chances are, during those formative years, you and your pals shared a great many laughs thanks to the movies of Jim Carrey and Mike Myers. Although I'm known for going on a great many diatribes, this is not one of those times, because on the show today, it's a comedic clash of cosmic and Canadian consequence. Two of the brightest stars of the Hollywood galaxy are going head-to-head, character to character and catchphrase to catchphrase. Is it gonna be fun? Yeah, baby. I had to do it, you knew it was coming, and it's over now. In one corner, it's Jim Carrey, the man of 1,000 faces, who's played everything from a pet detective to a lawyer to a limo driver who dreams of being a worm salesman.
I got worms.
I beg your pardon?
That's what we're gonna call it.
In the other, it's Mike Myers, who skyrocketed to fame thanks to SNL sketch characters like Wayne Campbell and found success on the big screen as that other British super spy. Both gents got their start on popular sketch shows. While Myers was hollering live from New York It's Saturday Night, Carrey was screaming even louder as the hyper Fire Marshal Bill on In Living Color. And now, decades after we first met them, they've reached the pinnacle of Tinseltown stardom, getting metaphorically tossed into a proverbial pit from which only one shall emerge victorious. Because that's what we do here on Versus.
I'm ready to go in, Coach. Just give me a chance.
And here is how we'll determine a winner. Round 1, box office. Round 2, Tomatometer / Audience Score. Round 3, best characters. Round 4, cultural legacy. And then we'll do a wild card round that might be as simple as which movie I love more, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective or Wayne's World. Both competitors have gone on to make many more films inside and outside of the comedy genre, but that duo of legendary flicks represents the first time I saw them on the big screen as a wee tyke. I left one theater headbanging to Queen and the other talking out of my butt. I've been doing both daily ever since.
Hello! What do you think you're doing? Only me and Garth get to talk to the camera.
Two of the all-time titans of talking pictures are going tete-a-tete, but reminder, it's all for fun. Cool? Excellent. Let's get it on.
Let's get down to business.
Round 1, box office. Whenever Jim Carrey competes in a Versus, like the time he vanquished Adam Sandler way back in season 1, the topic of box office comes up, and with good reason. Carrey's 1994 is up there with the most legendary year any entertainer has ever had. And in sports terms, that season for Jim Carrey ranks with Michael Phelps' 2012, Tiger Woods' 2002, and Dan Marino's 1984. Hey, Dan Marino is in Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which happens to be the movie that kicked off that legendary 94 run.
You don't have to tell me. I was there.
But before we get to that, Mike Myers hit it big at the box office with Wayne's World. Based on the beloved SNL sketch, the feature film opened on Valentine's Day 1992 and would go on to amass $183 million worldwide.
Excuse me? Baking powder?
Wayne's World 2 hit the following year, and although it only grossed $47 million, there's a reason for that. Everyone was wrong. It's like possibly the greatest comedy sequel ever.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going to go on my full tirade about this yet, but just know it's coming later in the show.
Cool.
It was less than 2 months after the disappointing box office for Wayne's World 2 that Ace Ventura hit theaters, and the comet known as Jim Carrey struck Hollywood.
Alrighty then.
The film shocked the industry by grossing over $100 million out of nowhere and would be the start of an unprecedented 8-film run that saw each movie gross at least $100 million, and 6 of those films raking in over $200 million bucks, including The Mask in the summer of '94 and Dumb and Dumber that December. Enjoy looking back, because you'll never see another year like that again.
Just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Oh, and Jim Carrey's 1995 wasn't all that bad either. The sequels Batman Forever and Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls teamed up to gross over 500 million smackers.
Was that over the top? I can never tell.
Meanwhile, Mike Myers had only made So I Married an Axe Murderer in addition to his Wayne's World duo, as he was still an all-star on that tiny little Saturday night hit TV show. But as Jim Morrison accurately predicted in The Desert, Wayne Campbell's alter ego was gearing up to go on a superb box office run of his own thanks to another Myers brainchild, a British super spy named Austin Powers. The first film debuted in 1997 and earned a respectable $67 million, but that number only hints at the mojo it generated.
Oh, behave.
1999's follow-up, The Spy Who Shagged Me, did $312 million and kicked off a stretch of 5 starring roles in a row that each earned at least $100 million, and at most did almost $1 billion thanks to an ogre named Shrek.
Why make trillions when we could make billions?
That was Shrek 2, and it built on the $491 million gross of the inaugural Shrek, released in May of 2001. With Myers voicing the titular character and fellow Saturday Night Live alum and multiplex hit machine Eddie Murphy, the 4 theatrically released films in the series have combined to haul in an astonishing $3 billion plus across the globe. That is living happily ever after.
All right, let's not overdo it.
So far, the connective tissue between Myers and Carrey seems to be tons of blockbusters and Cameron Diaz. She plays Stanley Ipkiss's love interest in The Mask and provides the voice of Princess Fiona in the Shrek films. But no one can keep churning out hits without a few duds, not even Will Smith. And as Carrey and Myers continued their careers, their respective hit-making cooled off for different reasons. For Mike Myers, he stopped starring in movies.
I like my privacy.
Which is a guaranteed way to not make money on the big screen. After Shrek III, he starred in his most recent live-action movie in 2008. That was The Love Guru, and it only took in $40 million.
Why do you hurt me?
Since Shrek Forever After in 2010, Myers has only been seen in small cameos at movie theaters, such as his portrayal of Ray Foster in the hit Queen biopic Bohemian Rhapsody, named for the song that Wayne and Garth had rocked out to a generation earlier. But Jim Carrey's remained a big screen stalwart right through his current resurgence as Dr. Robotnik, the thorn in Sonic the Hedgehog's side. A sequel's on its way to theaters as we speak, hot off the $300 million grossing 2020 original Sonic live-action movie. Carrey's also dabbled in that lucrative animation sandbox, starring in hits like Horton Hears a Who and A Christmas Carol. Even as those flicks team up to claim over $600 million in box office bullion, most folks know Jim Carrey for a different holiday tune, 2000's How the Grinch Stole Christmas. The subject of a very lively episode of Rotten Tomatoes is Wrong, took in $345 million, recouping most of the extravagant makeup costs required to turn Ace into the Grinch. So when we look at these two careers head-to-head, Carrey has the edge over Myers in terms of total box office bucks, $5.32 billion for the In Living Color fella to $4.44 billion for the SNL dude. However, Myers' per-film average is a remarkable $278 million. Carrey's is $166 million, which would sound unreal if it wasn't paired against Shrek. Mike Myers is like that surfer that patiently waits for the perfect wave before paddling out. Carrey just stays in the water all the livelong day. Which means you're going to fall if you're bored a few times, like with The Incredible Burt Wonderstone, or I Love You Philip Morris, or even Man on the Moon. None of those movies could even amass $50 million on their own. But for every misfire, there's also a hit like Mr. Popper's Penguins, Fun with Dick and Jane, or his all-time highest-earning movie, Bruce Almighty, which totaled $484 million.
Beautiful.
So it's average against career earnings. Myers and Carrey each have a solid claim in this round, but for me, I tend to lean more towards what you did on the live-action side of the aisle. Animated fare is for kids of all ages, and the Shrek movies may be the best example of that, but most of the dollars spent are because those little kids want to see a jovial ogre and a kinetic donkey, regardless of what superstar is providing the voice. And if Wayne's World opened the door for a new wave of comedic hitmakers in the 1990s, Ace Ventura, Dumb and Dumber, and Liar Liar kicked it down with the same veracity employed by lawyer Fletcher Reed when he beats the crap out of himself in a bathroom.
I'm kicking my Steven!
Plate appearances matter in baseball and in this round. Consider this nugget. While Mike Myers has made 7 movies that have crossed the $200 million box office Mendoza line, Jim Carrey has 14 such films to his credit. And neither guy needed steroids to do it, just a little help from the Dr. Seuss makeup department. I will award a hard-fought round 1 to Jim Carrey, and he goes up on his fellow countrymen 1-0.
Yes! Yes! Oh, yeah! Can you feel that, buddy? Huh? Huh? Huh?
Round 2, Tomatometer / Audience Score. And now the round that makes every comedic personality shiver with fear because we ask the question, how'd them critics like your movie?
Game over.
Don't sweat it too much. I'm also going to factor in the audience score here. As a matter of fact, let's start with that high note. Comedy is a fickle trade, and what one person finds funny, the next human may hate. So what's the case with Wayne and Ace? They're both fresh. Kinda. The audience score has Wayne's World 1 at a solid B average, which has got to be the best grade Wayne Campbell ever earned.
Ah, bite me.
At 84%. Wayne's World 2 is also rosy at 63%. And Ace Ventura has at least a fresh audience score average, with a rotten 57% for Part 1 being helped out by a fresh 72% for When Nature Calls. Carrey's audience score per film average is 57%, aided by Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind's 94%, a 93% for Sonic the Hedgehog, and 89% for The Truman Show.
Wow. That's amazing.
Mike Myers best Carrey's per movie average by a single point at 58%, buoyed by Shrek at 90%, an appearance in Inglourious Bastards at 88%, and the OG Austin Powers at 77%. The Mike-directed Supermesh about legendary music producer Shep Gordon is also resting comfortably at 84%, right next to Wayne's World. Hey, both of those talkies prominently feature Alice Cooper. We're not worthy.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
School's out on the audience score. Now it's time to feed the Frankenstein known as the Tomatometer. How'd our beloved Yuck Yuck lads do with the critics? Very well. And also quite horribly. You see, the Love Guru felt, dated is a nice way to say it, even upon its release in 2008. And as a result, it's at 14% rotten on the Tomatometer.
Ooh, ow.
What's even stinkier is Myers' all-time lowest flick on that vine, The Cat in the Hat at 9%. Oh boy, maybe the kid should not have answered the door.
I'm a cat that can talk. That should be enough for you people.
But if you think 9% is low, then you're just now getting into numerology. Jim Carrey's thrower, the number 23, which is sadly not about Michael Jordan, checks into the game at 8% rotten.
I didn't really have a lot to do.
But it's not even his basement. Yep, Jim Carrey is a member of the 0% Club, thanks to Dark Crimes from 2016.
Look, I told you what happened, okay? So just drop it.
And now the good Tomatometer news. The Truman Show, certified fresh at 95%, and the hit comedy Liar Liar Blue pens its way to a sterling 83%.
Huh?
However, both Ace Ventura movies are rotten, with When Nature Calls landing at just 25%. The great news is that Dumb and Dumber is fresh at 68%, yes. The sequel is 30%, which is why it lives in the basement wearing an iron mask.
That is a good one.
Mike Myers' trademark characters fare better than Jim's on the Tomatometer, as Shrek 2's at 89%, Shrek 1 is at 88%, and the first outing for Wayne's World and Austin Powers are also fresh at 79% and 73% respectively. Like the audience score metric, Mike Myers bests his competitor Jim Carrey by a single point on the Tomatometer when it comes to per movie average. 53% for Mike, 52% for Jim. Carrey's output helped him gut out a win in the box office round, but it might have clipped his wings here.
No!
Well, for now, Wayne and Garth have earned those Aerosmith backstage passes because Mike Myers gets his first win of the day, and we got us a tied ball game. Or hockey match. It's 1-1.
I promised myself I wouldn't cry.
Round 3, best characters. Both Jim and Mike, and I feel like I can refer to them by their first name, we all know each other, right? They were babysitting me as a kid.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Okay, look, I'm gonna keep it professional. Both Dr. Robotnik and Dr. Evil
I didn't spend 6 years in evil medical school to be called Mr. Thank You Very Much.
grew up in working class families in Canada. And long before Carrey and Myers earned their big screen medical degrees, they had to develop a sense of humor. And for both, their comedy chops were born out of a sense of desperation.
The details of my life are quite inconsequential.
Mike Myers was always told growing up that he wasn't the funniest one in the family. As a matter of fact, his own household considered him the least funny person at the dinner table.
Which I admit is both bogus and sad.
But once he started training with the famed Second City comedy troupe and landed a spot in 1989 on SNL, he made use of his family's frequent guffaws for the benefit of an international audience. Many of his quirky characters-to-be were reminiscent of his father, including the dad of Myers' lead role in So I Married an Axe Murderer. And when you hear that old guy talk, it might remind you of another Mike Myers creation that would be unleashed upon the world and buffets everywhere a few years later. But before we get to that belly, let's take a closer look at Jim Carrey's upbringing.
I surpassed everything you're ever going to do before I was a toddler.
doing his best to entertain his sick mother while attempting to escape the end-meeting jobs he had to take on as a mere teenager.
So you get fired again, huh?
Oh, yeah. They always freak out when you leave the scene of an accident, you know?
Carrey became proficient at imitating not only his own family, but famous celebrities like James Dean, Clint Eastwood, and Jack Nicholson.
44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world.
That unique talent was further honed on stand-up stages like Yuck Yucks in Toronto, and later at the world-famous Comedy Store, where he got a job answering phones. Just like the host of this show, Versus.
Nothing I'd call a career.
Jim's knack for spot-on impressions would serve him well in roles like Man on the Moon, where he took on the very spirit of Andy Kaufman, watched the Netflix doc, and later in the based-on-a-true-story dramedy, I Love You, Philip Morris. But when it comes to the most iconic characters ever played by Myers and Carey, we usually think of the ones that they dreamed up seemingly out of thin air. Wayne Campbell was loosely based on Mike Myers' friends growing up, while Jim Carrey played Ace Ventura like the 007 of the pet detective circuit. Hot on the heels of Ace, other Carrey classic roles like Stanley Ipkiss / The Mask and Lloyd Christmas in Dumb and Dumber quickly became all-time greats. And I would also toss the cable guy into that mix. Chip Douglas, or whatever name he's going by now, has become a cult hero to anyone who ever tried to slip the cable guy a $50 bill for all those premium channels.
You mean illegal cable?
As Carrey's career continued to soar, he showed his versatility in nailing more grounded folks ranging from Truman, blissfully unaware of the world he's in,
Who you talking
to his role in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, just simply a guy who wants to be blissfully unaware of the heartbreak he's currently feeling. But comedy lovers needn't worry. He was still making hits as lawyer Fletcher Reed in Liar Liar, and as a menace to himself and society in Me, Myself, and Irene. Even fictional folks born long before Carrey ever did an open mic were given a fresh spin, like Batman Forever's The Riddler and Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. Some kids grew up on Carrey's Grinch, but you won't find as many kiddos who swear by Mike Myers' Cat in the Hat rendition.
Well, what are you gonna do?
But that's not to say Mike petered out after Wayne's World. He was just getting warmed up. Remember how Carrey made 007 into a dolphin locator? Mike Myers took the more direct spoof approach with his James Bond, and the result was an international man of mystery named Austin Powers. Those films alone show the range that Mike Myers has. Austin has catchphrases and mojo to burn. At the same time, he's playing Dr. Evil, Powers' nemesis, and polar opposite in terms of looks and attitude. The sequels heightened the multi-character showcase as Fat Bastard capitalized on the comedic promise showed by the Axe Murderer movie. So if you've made it this far, I'm assuming you enjoy a Scottish accent, well, you're in luck. Myers would go on to voice Shrek, an ogre who originally had none other than Chris Farley as his voice. After Farley's tragic passing, Myers stepped in with his normal vocal range, but upon further review, Mike asked to re-record Shrek as Scottish. The move cost DreamWorks a reported $5 million, but y'all remember the box office round? I'd say it was a worthwhile investment.
Aren't we lucky we were there to get all that information? It seemed extraneous at the time.
It shouldn't be forgotten that Mike Myers can also do drama, proven by small roles like Steve Rubell in 54, but his output simply can't match what Carrey has done, especially post-millennium. Mike Myers has no doubt left his mark in terms of genius character creations that we'll celebrate for generations to come, but Carrey's prolific penchant for constant reinvention gets him the nod in round 3, and he takes the win. It's 2-1 with Jim on top.
Are you mental?
Round 4, cultural legacy. It's an enormous feat just getting by in Hollywood, whether it's in the movies, at a recording studio, or on the lighted stage. But much higher than even those dizzying heights is where the legends that are Mike Myers and Jim Carrey reside. They did far more than just eke out a living or have a successful run for a few years. They've cultivated a resume that features hit movies so ingrained in the cultural zeitgeist that we walk, talk, and act like they're characters, sometimes without even knowing that it's them we're imitating. Who amongst us hasn't uttered a, yeah baby, and alrighty then, or proclaimed, excellent? We'll put our pinky up to our mouth to look devious, and anytime a sports announcer gets an opportunity to reference an underdog team looking for an upset, you will inevitably hear,
so you're telling me there's a chance?
Well, both Myers and Carrey have a good chance to pull out a win in this round because we'll look at the lasting impact that their lines, delivery, and infectious personalities have had on our lives. To look at Wayne's World as just a lucky break that inspired many other less lucky sketch-based movies is entirely too simplistic. When Wayne and Garth hit theaters, audiences were looking for something fresh and new. and the advent of the 1990s and the ascent of Gen X provided the perfect opportunity for a revolution led by two simpletons.
Imagine being able to be magically whisked away to Delaware. Hi, I'm in Delaware.
Except Myers and Dana Carvey were anything but simplistic themselves. Wayne's World could appear to be dumb comedy, but it was made by very smart people. But one could argue that the small Aurora-based cable access show was just the opening act for a headliner like no other. 1994 ushered in a comet named Jim that became the next big thing in comedy. You can count on one hand the amount of superstars who had a comedic run anywhere close to Carrey. And by the time his 1994 season was done, and we saw Lloyd Christmas desperately sprinting towards the Hawaiian Tropic bus to alert them of a nearby town's whereabouts, Hollywood had been forever changed. But whereas Jim Carrey's career continued to soar and saw him earn a number of Golden Globe nominations, wins, and Oscar buzz, since 2000 Carrey has never quite found the same magic as that initial surge, which is understandable because replicating that run would be impossible. Mike Myers can't compete with the steady stream of success in a variety of roles like Carrey. He also won't ever match the award nominations of his competitor today. But that's not necessarily needed for this round, because he had two other grand slams that could seal the deal. Austin Powers and the Love Guru. Who wrote that? Shrek. Austin and Shrek.
Take it easy, Frodo.
And once Shrek came along, it was definitive proof that Pixar did not have a stranglehold on animation going forward. The big green guy, his princess, and donkey counterpart are all still staples of any family movie night.
Thank you very much. I'm here till Thursday.
Sometimes we reference Mike Myers without ever knowing it, or even confusing it for another Myers named Mike.
What is this man?
Austin Powers.
Doc said Michael Myers.
This is Mike Myers.
It should be the Halloween mask.
This is a Halloween mask.
No, the killer dude from Halloween.
Oh, you mean Jason?
No!
It's just one of the thousands of examples proving how influential Mike Myers and Jim Carrey have been. And in something of a mild upset, I'm gonna give the win in this round to Myers. Despite my personal history being a little more smitten with Carrey than Mike, he did land first and he kept throwing haymakers. So we're tied at 2-2 heading into the final fight.
Daddy's back.
And now it's time for the wild card round, memorable moments. A legacy as firm as Mike Myers or Jim Carrey could only be cemented by a career chock full of legendary moments. And while Myers pulled out the win as more culturally influential, the moments that made these fellas might lean towards Carrey, as he has a much deeper and broader body of work than his counterpart. But when Myers has a shot on goal, he usually sticks it, including his very first role as Wayne Campbell. The headbanging to Bohemian Rhapsody scene early in the first Wayne's World flick perfectly set the tone for the film that followed. It was as funny as it was a gateway into Wayne and Garth's very soul. Their run-ins with Alice Cooper, Aerosmith, and Jim Morrison were also highlights, and as I'm fond of reminding you all, this is one of the few times in history that the sequel has been better than the original. At least for me, anyway. More Chris Farley, Chris Walken, and a scene-stealing, story-weaving roadie by the name of Del Preston all add up to a great time in Wayne's World 2, capped off by an endlessly rewatchable radio station scene where the boys are guests on Handsome Dan's show. Remember, kids, you never want to meet your DJ heroes.
And that's how you like to live your life, is it?
Just enjoy the sound of their voice.
Good stuff. I think people are getting really cranked.
Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, is a film that, like most other comedies, couldn't match the greatness of its predecessor, although there's many fans who would argue its superiority. Being in the theater opening weekend for the OG Ace as an almost high schooler marked one of the hardest laughing sessions I've ever experienced. From the opening HDS package delivery to his walk in and out of every scene, I simply could not believe one person could be that funny. The chuckles continued with the effervescent buoyancy of the mask and the laugh until it hurts gutbusters found in Dumb and Dumber. From limo driving to Samsonite,
I was way off.
Jim Carrey was a riot, but I'm also going to credit Jeff Daniels. From mutt cuts to an unfortunate bathroom mishap at Mary's house, he had an astounding performance that saw Daniels hang with one of the best to ever do it at their apex. Carrey's bathroom scene in Liar Liar pairs nicely, as does his entire transformation for Man on the Moon and How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Austin Powers and its sequels rarely leave a comedic stone unturned, but for me, nothing beats Dr. Evil and his misunderstandings of modern culture.
Which we shall call Preparation H.
Or his over-the-top villainous laugh that slowly dies out over what seems like hours. And even with Shrek acting as more of the straight player to Donkey's sideshow shenanigans, let's also credit Myers with helping a franchise stick around until we got the ultimate memorable moment maker, Puss in Boots.
Pray for mercy from Puss in Boots.
But only one comedy legend can take home a win today, and for that consistently funny energy from a line delivery and physicality standpoint, I gotta roll with cable guy Jim Carrey. Sealing his victory, though, were also those more dramatic turns in Eternal Sunshine and The Truman Show when we realize the gravity of what our character is dealing with in Sunshine and what they will have to reckon with in Truman's collapsed world. It's been a hard-fought battle between two of the greatest Canadian exports since maple syrup and poutine, but Jim Carrey and his cavalcade of comedic carnage gets the win in this round, and thus, he takes the match.
Jordan fades back, swoosh, and that's the game!
Carrey wins it for me, but now it's your turn, dear viewer. Hit me up on social media at Mark Ellis Live with your take. And if you ever make it to Los Angeles, chances are you'll find me telling jokes at the world-famous Comedy Store where Jim Carrey found a home and employment some 40 years ago. That's all for me. As Dr. Evil would say, I bid you adieu, and in the immortal words of Stanley Ipkiss's alter ego, this episode of Versus has been smoking.